Yes. No. Just kidding there.
Just get him out.
I will,
Just get him out.
after we do our, roll there. All right, you guys all ready?
Ready.
All over there? You guys are both ready? All right, it is 7:01. I'll go ahead and call to order the January 3rd regular scheduled meeting of the Weld RE5J Board of Education. Ms. Diagon, would you please, never mind. You'd all take a moment to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think we need to work on syncing our pledge better.
It will be our resolution.
Ms. Diagon, will you call roll?
Monica Thompson?
Here.
Amanda Proctor?
Here.
Nate Sisano?
Here.
Amy Musgrave? Here. Michael Wales?
Here. We do need to approve an agenda for this evening. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Okay.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
A motion by Vice President Sisano, second by Director Johnson to approve and as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. Do we have any citizen comments on agenda items? We'll move on to our staff and student celebrates. Superintendent Nielsen.
President Wales and board members, welcome back. Happy New Year. Hope you all had a chance to spend good time over the break. We certainly had a chance to get away. People upstairs got away. I'll start tonight by just saying we have talked a little bit with President Wales and Vice President Sisano about celebrating our state champions in 2 weeks. We have state champion both from our dance and cheer team, so that's pretty cool. Over the past couple of weeks, maybe it's been a month since we've been together. We've had a chance to do several things, lots of them this time not including students, which I think is interesting. But had a chance with Assistant Superintendent Kramer to tour RMS just before the holiday with all of the admin from the middle school. So that was the first time the assistant principals from middle school have been on site, and it's pretty neat to see. If you haven't been by there, to see the metal going up in the middle is really starting to frame in what I think will be the real new part of that school. You can start to see it. So that was a great time. 5 of us had a chance to spend time together down at Casby. I really enjoyed my first opportunity to be there as a superintendent. I think had the opportunity to learn quite a bit, but probably the best part was spending time with each of you. Over the last several weeks, some of you maybe had a chance to see the art show at PRE. It was pretty neat to see what they did on their walls. But one of the things that stuck out for me was what happened in the art room in terms of how she structured the art room during that event so that everything was blacklit and you could go in there and do all blacklit kind of art. And it was amazing to see what students were doing in there, but also just to see her creativity was pretty cool. I think first time, I don't know in how many years, but what I've heard is for quite a few years, we had combined concerts before break. Our middle school orchestra played with the high school orchestra, middle school band with the high school band, and our middle school choir with the high school choir, and they did separate, and then had some opportunity to combine. We had an orchestra, I think, Tabitha, you said 60 kids in an orchestra? Over 60 kids in an orchestra. So I think when you project that forward and you start to see the collaboration going on between our middle school music program and our high school music program, there's some synergies right now that I think will build going forward, and those kinds of things when you allow your school to see themselves with the high school musicians, but alongside them has an opportunity to help us continue to grow those programs. So that lots of positive feedback. We're hearing about that. We have heat back in this building. I think you saw that Friday update. We've had some troopers in this building, right? And particularly those individuals that are on the first floor. The further east you went, the colder this building was. And so to have that all repaired. So I had some time to come down and watch them move those things off the roof and on the roof, which is pretty neat if you're not a construction guru. For me, it was pretty neat to watch how they did all that. Tomorrow we have professional development, and we're doing something a little different in that all 5 schools have a little expectation from us that they all are doing a couple of things the same to create some common language. One of the exercises we're having them do has to do with where we are as we are humans, and we talk about it above the line and below the line. All of us spend time in both places, but recognizing where you are at any time as you step in any conversation is important to how you're going to show up. So they're going to do a little work with that. And then the other one is common just opportunities to engage students. So it's an article, an opportunity for teachers to talk to teachers, but leveraging good practices, true and tried practices around engagement, not because we're trying to say here's the 10 best ways to do it, but to engage teachers in that conversation about how are we allowing students to do the heavy lifting, and what are the ways we can do that and foster some of that in the classroom rather than the teachers still feeling like they may be the ones doing all the lifting and the students can sit back and let the teacher do that. So those are a couple common things, and then each of the buildings will continue with what their focus areas are, but we've asked all 5 to have a couple areas that are common just as we continue to do that. And then we're spreading out across the district, so we'll be in buildings to pay attention to how's that working, what's it look like, but also for some accountability, right? We're asking them to do it, and so we're going to spread out and be resources if they need any support. So I'm excited about that. The other thing that we've had a chance to do over break is spend some time looking at how we did first year from an academic standpoint. There's some academic data that comes across middle of the year, and I'm pretty excited about it. There's certainly some celebrations across our district, some really strong celebrations. There's also some questions for us to ask, and so we'll be doing some of that work with principals when we're together with them on Friday. But I also wanted to suggest or talk just a little bit about that in terms of what we think about for the board as we continue to think about how do we help you monitor what we're doing, right? Ultimately, that's the role that you get to play, is to help pay attention to what we're doing. So we'll be spending some time thinking about how and what do we share with you as we build out what I would say a monitoring report or rhythm or routine for you all, for us to showcase some of our celebrations, but also some wonderings that we still have. And I think that's probably it for celebrations for now. I think I just meant one or two, but we might want to collapse those for me. I don't know.
It's pretty fluid at this point.
It always has been for me. I can't.
Any questions or additions? Anything?
So how do you guys have peace? It's a blessing to all the staffers here, so that's great.
You may notice we don't have windows all over the building right now, so we're finally under reconstruction, I guess is what you'd say. They're doing the east end of our building, and we think it's going to take 6 to 8 on the east side, and then they'll work their way around the building. But as they're going, they're finding more work than they thought they had, so the whole process may take longer than we thought, and we may end up getting more of this building fixed than we originally thought, just based on some of the things they're finding when they get in there.
So just new windows are being,
New windows, and initially they were gonna take out the whatever you call the
Jason?
casing and clean it. It was bad enough they're redoing the casing. So we're gonna end up getting all new casing and all new windows, and they're doing some other work.
This is all in insurance.
Insurance is covering all of it right now. So, and I know one of the areas that they've looked at is front entryway potentially is something they didn't plan on doing that they may now be looking at. It has some issues too. So we'll keep you posted, but we're under construction, so that'll be the better part of the spring, working on this building.
Are they putting a glazing on the windows to help with the heat and cold?
I don't think so. I don't think there's glazing on it.
I don't believe so.
I think it's like for like.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's move on to, I was going to say in our far as celebrations and recognitions is because we haven't been together since CASB, and just point out that our students did get an award from CASB for the exchange. So that was awesome. And it was a cash award, so they get to put some money back into that program. So that's even better.
That's awesome.
All right, well, yeah, let's slide in reports and comments from board members.
I'll start over on the side. Also had a great time at CASB. It was an election year, so I got to go into some classes that weren't available last year that were particularly for board members. I just found those really helpful, informative. I just thoroughly enjoyed the keynote speakers, very inspirational. With the keynote speaker on, I want to say Thursday morning, who focused on what a difference just one teacher can make in the life of a student was just inspirational. And you can plug in, you don't have to plug in the word teacher, you can plug in anybody into that role, just someone that takes an interest in a student's life and how far that can change the trajectory of that student's life. So that was really good. And the other thing I wanted to report was at the library where I work, we had a Christmas event where Santa Claus came. And so I asked if the Interact Club wanted to come and participate in volunteering. And they're always amazing to step up. And we always give them the option, obviously, of we go to you first because they're so reliable and they're so good. If they're busy, we have other sources that we can call on to volunteer. But every time we've asked, they've showed up in full force. And they've run well-oiled machine. That program is, I'm so impressed with the student leadership, with the staff leadership, and just the maturity. It's such a pleasure to work with the Interact students. And then in addition, it was kind of fun because we also had past graduates of our that were there to get service hours for their Bright Futures service hour requirement. And so it was fun to see past students that had been a part of Club Interact come back and participate in that community involvement. So just always a huge shout out to the Interact Club and the wonderful work they do for the community. And I thought that the band and the choir concerts were so good. I love that. I talked about it, but I love that they're integrating and getting kids excited at a middle school level to move to the next level. And it's just so fun to be in the new RHS auditorium. It's such a great venue, and there's so much seating, and it was just such a pleasure. So everyone involved in that program did a great job too. It was really fun. That's all I got.
Pass. I was so close to the mic.
Pass.
I don't have a ton to add. CABSI was great. A lot of good information, a lot of good breakout sessions, but I think the best part was just getting to know all of you, and especially our new member, a little bit better. So it was good, good time to be spent down there. other than that, like, I mean, Christmas throws a wrench in everything. But I am excited to hear about the music programs. I think that is something that has been a little lacking, especially at RHS in the last few years, and not from a lack of trying from staff. I know it starts young, and you have to kind of build those programs up, and it's great to hear that we're working on. So I met the middle school, I think she's the choir and music orchestra, instrumental music director at an event a couple weeks ago, and she is a ball of energy, so which is a good thing. So I'm really excited to hear about the music program. Wish we had known about the concert because I would have been there, but I'm glad to hear that's happening at Roosevelt. So.
And her students love her.
Good.
She's everyone's favorite, I feel like. So, because on a side note, she tried to get all of her students to help her win Taylor Swift tickets. So they were.
Of course they love.
So of course they're like, we will follow you to the ends of the earth. But they did not win. They did. Sad. It was a good group effort.
That's all.
Actually, Casby was amazing. Had a great time getting to know all of you guys. Really the only thing we did the past month, the RHS sponsored the Adopt a Senior. And I watched my daughter, I think she adopted 8 seniors. So she had a good time putting those gifts together. A lot of friends did the same thing. My friends' kids did it. It was a really cool program. I enjoyed watching our high school get together and bless a lot of senior citizens with their time and effort and just little gifts. It was really, really quite neat. So great program. I didn't even know we did that until this year. My daughter got involved. So that's really all we did with the school this past month. We've been doing a lot of relaxed family time.
That's always good.
That's it, yeah.
Well, I'd echo everything everybody said about Casby. I did oring classes, how to plan, how to organize, and I gotta get stuff. So be prepared. Exciting things are coming. Well, things are coming. They're not going to be exciting. But no, it was great. I think the best part, like Nate said, was probably just having the opportunity to be with you guys. Sorry, Amanda, you weren't there, but just get to know everybody and learn a little bit more, especially Scott and Amy, the new folks on our team, and it was enjoyable watching from St. Vrain let their hair down at Bees.
Oh, they did, yeah.
Is that the correct adjective?
There was a lot of
How about
dancing.
my you said?
A lot of dancing.
A lot of dancing.
It was a sight.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I've got, which is amazing. I usually have quite a bit. We'll go on to the report from Superintendent's office.
Well, I think most of it I've shared, but one of the things I want to make sure we talk about, and I think some of you may know, maybe all of you do, but we have beam raising, the last beam to be put up at RMS will be next Wednesday at 10 in the morning. If any of you are able to attend, we'd love to have you join us. The beam was at MMS before the holiday, and the students all had a chance to sign it.
Good.
Turned out to be a great last day before break activity. And so that's there. The beam is now back on site. And so that will be put up. We'll not have students there that day. We're not going to interrupt. So we've taken, I think, in social media a little bit of a hit for that, is that we don't have the beam raising. But when we've talked to A&P, they're pretty, they want to do it now. They feel like the weather's still good and they want to move as fast as they can. So when we talked even about shifting it around a couple hours that day, they wanted it done. So we're going to do it then. We'll have a video we can utilize with students, but we'd love to have you join us if you're able to.
I'm trying to remember. I think for Elwell, I don't think the students were present for the actual raising. I mean, they had an opportunity to come sign it, but I don't.
Yeah, I think it's hard to have too many students
Yeah,
that anyway.
I mean, it's kind of a-
Choose which ones
kind of
if
a
you
dangerous situation. Because I was at the one for I just don't remember there being a lot of students there.
The one for Roosevelt didn't have a ton of students. I mean, more because it's the high school and it was a little bigger
have
deal.
easier to do.
But yeah, and frankly, it's a nice thing, but it's a little anticlimactic. I
Totally.
mean, you watch the steel workers up there with their, impact guns, putting bolts in steel, and
Yep.
and then it's done and you walk away.
Yep.
So it'll be much more exciting to see when there's, drywall up and, those kind of things.
Well, yeah, and it's definitely one of those that you want to be anticlimactic. You don't want
Yeah,
to
that's true. That's true.
get up there and start swaying around and people are jumping off.
If it's rain, that there's something not going right. And there'll be other opportunities for students to celebrate as that school gets closer and closer to being finished. So there'll be plenty of other
I just-
monumental ceremonies.
Yeah, I just wanted you to hear that, there's a couple of, I think, comments that we've seen that have just been, we're sad we can't be there and our kids can't be there for them. We understand because they see events and it makes sense to want your kids to enjoy that, but you're right. There'll be lots of points along the way for those students to get excited about the new building. And there's this dance you have to do because we're still going to be where we are for another year. So our students have to be engaged in the current location, which maybe is one area that I haven't touched on is we had a chance before break to go out and walk the middle school and get a sense of some of what we have already in place there, including before break, we updated the Wi-Fi so that it is at the same level as all the other schools in town, the district. And so that was a good step for MMS, but also for how we leverage that building going forward. But also just a chance to get to know some of the technology that's there, and how, what are some of the upgrades we'll have to do as we continue to think about that building as a 3-5. And one of the things I think is important, and I think it will be important as we talk about that, there have been some comments over time, our own staff, right, is about that building. It's actually not a terrible building. There's a lot of positives in that building. I walked through it and have a chance to look at it from what does it lend to students. And so there's work we can do to update it, but it is a functioning, good school building. It's hard when you see what brand buildings look like, but when I compare that building to lots of buildings that we have around the state, around the country, MMS is we'll be able to make that a nice experience for students. And so I just think it's important for us as we begin looking forward to that we talk like that, and we'll be having that same conversation with our administrators too, because messaging matters, and so how we set ourselves up for that will be important.
Scott, just one thing, the theme event is at 9 on the 10th.
9 a.m. on the 10th. Thanks. I think that's it for me.
All right, any questions?
Just piggybacking off of the recent social media from the district, I really liked seeing them as they start advertising that the building will be opening in 2025. So that's been fun to see, and not quite a countdown, but kind of a countdown as people start realizing that there's an end point. And
then it's not Monday.
yes, please don't show up to that school this Monday. Please show up in a year. So yeah, that's been fun to see that advertised really clearly too. It's been good.
I will feel much better when it is February and we start talking about a January opening, because
It still makes you nervous.
I saw that beam thing come up yesterday and I thought, oh God.
People are going to show up for school.
People are going to be with backpacks and for their lunches and
Yeah, for our 12 viewers, don't show up to the new school this Monday.
all right, anything else? We can move on to our consent agenda. So our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Most of the items listed under the consent agenda have gone through board review and recommendation. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive review. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a board member. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Proctor, a second by Vice President Sassano to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, Jessica, would you please pull the board?
Monica Johnson,
Yes.
Amanda Proctor,
Yes.
Nate Sassano,
Yes.
Amy Musgrave, Michael Whale.
Yes. We'll move on to our old business. Our first item under, our only item under old business is the policy changes with JLCD.
Thanks, President Wales, and I think we possibly looked at this as a second reading, but given we had limited feedback from the community, but we also had a conversation with many of you about how you felt about what we taught at Elwell. And given the feedback that we heard, we made, really it's one substantive change that you can see if you look at the red line, and it was really to take away the line that we had in the old policy around middle school, high school students, and separating elementary students, and limited to just students. And for us, we felt like that helped us, and we think it gives a little more control of this process to parents who know their kids best. So about half down, I think, talks about students may possess and self-administer. Keep in mind, we're talking over-the-counter medicine, so it's Tylenol. It allows for us not to be hard and fast. You have to be a sixth grader before that kicks in. If a parent decides it's a fourth or a fifth grader that wants to do it. The second part, I think, as we had some conversations about this, there were questions from board members about what happens if we have students who don't handle the over-the-counter medicine correctly, or bring in a bottle and they start passing around. We have other policies that handle that process, right? We're in a position where we can handle that in a different way. But I think the other thing that's important in here is that we still have the ability as a site, even in this policy, that if we have a student that struggles with bringing their own medicine and taking it appropriately, that as a site, we can say to that particular student, you no longer can carry your own over-the-counter, while not saying that to all students. So we feel like this policy, the way it reads now, gives us more flexibility, doesn't pigeonhole, and allows parents to have the ability to make the call to make with their students. So what we're asking is for you to take a look at this again. We thought there may be some more conversation, but then we bring it back. We'd leave this open for 2 more weeks and changes, and come back and approve it at the 17th, if that fits. And I'll stop there and open it up for whatever conversation, questions the board may have.
I think one of my biggest questions is, which was brought up through a community member, was what if students don't necessarily have access to over-the-counter medicines? Maybe they have a really bad headache, but there's not ibuprofen or Tylenol available in the home. But what happens in that scenario? Small things like cough drops, are they still available with school nurses? Do students carry those too? Those were a few of my questions that I had.
So currently, or maybe I'll say our practice up until this point, which has not aligned to our policy, has been we have had nurses that have given the over-the-counter medicine out. Tabitha, I'm going to ask you to correct me as I misspeak, because I probably will. So that's been our current practice. We shouldn't have been doing that because we haven't had any standing saying we could. And so we've got nurses in our district that are uncomfortable with the position they're put in, giving kids medicine that they're not supposed to be giving. Am I spot on right there, Tabitha? What would you add to what I'm saying? Anything?
It goes against their license to be able to provide any over-the-counter medications without the orders.
So I have a question on that. So that's correct. Like I couldn't give that as a nurse. Do we have, if there's a situation like Monica is given here and we have the letter from the nurse at KQA, could there be a person on the staff, maybe an administrator that could give that Tylenol? As a mom, I can give Tylenol, or as Monica could give Tylenol to that student, but as a nurse, I can't. Like, is there, I don't know if it's okay with the parents. I don't know if we could look at maybe that those kids that aren't privileged to have locations at home. A person who's not a nurse could give that. But I don't know, it's kind of a gray area. If you're giving Tylenol to a child, you definitely need parents' permission, but it wouldn't affect anyone's license that way. I don't know. I don't know, how often does that happen though?
Well, it currently, that's happening.
I know. Yeah, so we don't really know.
Right.
Okay.
I would like the nurses to consider that they're a liaison between families who are struggling and the community access. So our nurses can reach out to different entities in the community to see if they would be willing to donate something to the family so they do have access to that. So then that way it's not falling onto someone else in the building to be responsible for providing those things, but then that way the family still is able to access.
So maybe give it to the family? Okay. The nurse couldn't give it to the family. Yeah. Okay.
Does that fall under that cough drop rule too, where, or cough drops are able to be administered by school nurses? Is that correct?
It's
With this new policy?
In this new policy, the language, anything like a cough drop, that's not something that's included under the license, and it's included in the language of this. Those kind of things would be fine.
I think they still feel weird about changing the policy mid-year. I feel like there's just not enough time to properly communicate it out. You know, beginning of the year, you have all the policies, and you're signing all the things, and you're reading all the things. And I think changing it mid-year is just an odd time to change it.
Yeah.
I think the timing is really off.
It might be an odd time to change it, but you're putting people's licenses in jeopardy. So, I mean, if it wasn't, I think that's an urgent need and a time that it's appropriate to change it. We don't want to put our school nurses in jeopardy.
Well, we're also currently violating our policy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this new policy would put us, I mean, it's backwards a little bit,
Right.
but it would put us in
Yeah.
compliance with our policy.
And I think that's what our nurses, I think, have been asking for this. I'm not sure for how long, but they're feeling what Amy's talking about. They feel like, one, they're out of compliance with our policy, and two, they're putting their license at risk on a day-to-day basis. I do agree. I think it's a tough time to do it. I think we're going to have to communicate, and we're going to have some families that are frustrated. We're going to ultimately have some families that I think feel better about it because we're putting into place the ability to carry over-the-counter medicine, which we haven't been. I mean, we may have families doing it quietly, but I can tell you, in my own household, this is sure the Poudre School District has allowed high school students to self-carry, and it's made my daughter feel much more comfortable putting a couple Advil in her pocket than she ever felt before. So we're going to end up with people who appreciate it. I think our nurses will appreciate it, and we'll have to communicate. This is the change, right? This is what's going to happen. Here's what we're going to ask, and we got to get to a point where you're comfortable voting on it first, but I do what Amy's saying is important. Is we have staff members that are uncomfortable with the current practice and would like not to continue to do that.
So this is the second reading, so as we review it and go over it, if we make the changes to be in compliance on this policy, how do we get the word out to our school district? What is our plan at that point?
You want to talk a little bit about that?
So I would ask that all of our building administrators send out notifications through their newsletters and a separate email, so that way it doesn't get lost in all of the newsletter information. In addition to that, posting it on our social media sites, making sure that it's communicated from the district as well, and offering times for families. If you have questions, please can talk to your school nurse, please can talk to your administrator.
Do we know currently, I don't know if do we track, I guess, how often a building nurse is giving out this type of medication? Do we keep track of that?
They have their logs. I definitely can get you that information for next meeting.
Well, no, that's a lot of work. That's not what I'm asking. My question is more about, I'm wondering if there are kind of frequent flyers in a building that we could then communicate to their parents, hey, this isn't going to happen anymore.
They do communicate even now with those frequent flyers, as you put it. Nurses will call families and let them know, even if they're not giving out over-the-counter medication, just letting them know that your student has been down to the office 10 times this week. Talking about what's going on, is there anything that you need at home, how can we help support, and things like that. We've also been working with the general education staff, sending out just information about when it's appropriate to send a student to the nurse and things like that as well. So yes, they would communicate that.
And I'm just wondering if we could even put together a list of those students and
Some individuals.
call, email a family that we know that kid is coming down to the office for a Tylenol or a headache or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think outside the box a little bit, which is rare for me. So.
Old boxy over here. So we have a couple options here. We can, because this is a second reading, we can move to approve this. Somebody could make a motion to approve it as it has been changed. Or if we take no action on it, we can leave it open as essentially for a third reading and allow for any other changes to come in and some time to essentially digest it. So
I'll just state my opinion. I feel like because we made changes, because changes were made between last reading and this reading, I'd be appropriate to let the public have more input if they choose to. So that'd be my opinion, is let it sit for another couple of weeks, even though staff want to make a change and deserve to not put their license at risk to work for us. I'd be wise to let folks have some more input if they choose to.
I think so. I think with Christmas break and people being so focused on that aspect, just to give, as everyone gets back into their schedule and swing of things, if anyone has public comments, to give that courtesy and take action at our next meeting, I think that would probably be a good rule of thumb to follow.
And I'm wondering if we don't. Let me ask this. So our nurses they're all our nurses are contracted. That is my understanding, right?
No, our nurses, so last year we did have contracted nurses. This year we hired them.
Okay, so all the nurses are direct hires. So, I mean, I really want to honor what Amy Musgrave is asking for in protecting licenses. Can we, I don't know, what I wanted to say is, can we kind of give a directive to the superintendent to pass on that we don't want you.
But to follow policy.
Right.
Which is really what, we would be following policy if we stopped giving over-the-counter medicine when they come back to school on Monday. Right?
That's already in the policy.
Because that's already in our current policy. So
we're not giving over-the-counter right now.
We are.
If I was a nurse on staff, I would refuse to give over-the-counters until this.
We do have some nurses that have done that, and I've been in support of that.
Okay.
Because that is what we done. The entire nursing team is not doing it.
Okay.
But we certainly could, I think, to answer your question, President Woods, we certainly could say to the nurses Monday, we're not giving out over the counter. We could start communicating, and we could communicate as though we're getting in line with the current policy. And then we'd have to communicate again 2 weeks later to say we now modified the policy to do, here's how we, I think it made it easier for parents to support their students without expecting the nurses to do it.
Right.
Which is what's happened, right? We as a district over time have done this. And so parents that would like their kids to have Advil at school know they can ask the nurse to give it and the nurse will give it. So we could do that, which would, I think, support the nurses that already are saying no. I think give an edict to the ones that still are. And you saw in the email out to the board a nurse who is in favor of continuing to do that, in favor of taking care of and feeling like that's her role. She just happens to be in a different place than most of the rest of the nurses that we currently have.
Well, I think more than anything, I think we need to, until we get this fully squared away, it needs to be communicated that the district is not asking our nurses to put themselves in any type of jeopardy. I mean, just if, I don't even want to say it, because once you say it, then that's what people hear. But if you want to do that, that is your own prerogative.
Sure.
But
Maybe
But-
let them know if they don't do it, they're not going to face any.
We have their back.
Yeah. It's okay.
so outside of that piece, again, we could, if somebody wants to move this forward, we could make a motion and adopt this tonight, or nobody say nothing for the next 10 seconds, and I will move on to special business.
Yeah, I would move that we adopt it tonight, but I can also, if we want to hear from some of our nurses and some of parents or whoever. It is kind of odd to me that we haven't heard much from the communities. This is, I don't know, kind of a bigger deal.
Well, and to that, I say too, it's, there's a lot of bad timing in here. One,
Yeah.
mid-year, over the holiday break, cold and flu season is upon us. There's a lot of things working, but I think maybe one of the reasons why we haven't heard anything is because of the break. People just check out.
I also, we're likely to hear when we communicate, we're changing what we're doing. But we're gonna hear people who want us to continue to do practices against our policies, practices that are against what our nurses need for support. That's, I think, what we'll hear when we change it, because it changes it to be not in our nurses' hands to take care of the over-the-counter for families. There's a little more responsibility, I think, we're giving to the families. We're also giving them opportunity that they haven't had. So I think it's a nice, it feels like a nice win for us. And we're going to hear from some that are frustrated by that, I think.
Oh, it's school board business. Never happens. All right, let's move on to special business. Our only item again of special business is the certification of our mill levy collection. So going over to the mistress.
Thank you, President Wales, members of the Board of Education, and Superintendent Nielsen. Tonight, I am asking the board to certify the district's mill levies for the 2024 auction year. On the second page of the presentation, this isn't a normal year for levy certifications. Normally, this would have been done last month, but changes were made by the state legislature in November in SB 23B-001. And just a quick overview of some of those changes that impact the district. The residential property assessment rate dropped from 7.65% to just 6.7%. And the actual value of residential property will be reduced by $55,000 for the current tax year, up from the previous $15,000. Certification date changes. Today was the deadline for final certifications from the county to the district to get us those final numbers. Both Larimer and Weld got their final certifications in December. So we're ready to go with that. And then the deadline for final certification is the 10th of this month, and I'll be sent tomorrow, should the board approve it. And then moving on to the third page, assessed valuation changes from the preliminary valuations in August to the final valuations. So just as a point of comparison, for Weld County, our assessed valuation for collection year 2023 was about $651.6 million. The preliminary valuation that we received in August was about $1.3 $1,352 million. The final valuation that we received in December was $1,327 million. There was a decrease of almost $25 million, or about 1.83% from the preliminary valuation to our final valuation. So those changes I talked about in the previous slide about the residential assessment rate being reduced and then the actual property value being reduced by $55,000 instead of $15,000, contributed mostly to that decrease that we're seeing of about $25 million in our Weld County assessed valuation. And then just as a note, our assessed valuation is almost 104% this year over last year. So over doubled what our final assessed valuation was from Weld. For Larimer County, assessed valuation for collection year 23 was $529,000. Preliminary valuation in August was $653,000. And our final valuation was $629,000. It was a decrease of just over $24,000, or 3.71%, from the preliminary valuation to our final valuation. And for Larimer County, our assessed valuation went up almost 19% year over year. Moving on to the fourth slide. Mill levy rate for collection year 2024. So our total program mills are 21.414. Mill levy overrides 3.387. Abatements for we only have abatements in just Weld County. We don't have any for Larimer County. And for Weld, it's 0.214 mills. General obligation bond, though these are the principal and interest payments that we need to make to our bondholders for our construction projects within the district, 8.973 mills, for a total 2024 collection year mill levy assessment of 33.988 mills. By comparison, for the 2023 collection year, the district assessed 45.735 mills. And so that is a decrease for collection year 2024 of 11.747 mills. And then moving to the last slide, our requested board action. District Administration is requesting board approval for the property tax mill levy resolution included with this presentation. This concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may.
Amanda? Oh, anybody have questions?
The one question I had thinking about the trending is from 22 to 23, there was a reduction in mills too. Off the top of your head, do you recall? Because I think we've had a few years of decreasing mills based off of the assessed value.
The first year after we passed the bond program was the highest level that we had. And then it did ticked down 3 or 4 mills during that time frame, and then now, this one we're almost going down 12 mills. So the actual dollar value isn't. The actual dollar value is going to remain pretty constant with homeowners especially, just because most of our mills are dollar based. So our mill levy overrides and our general obligation bond payments, those are all dollar based. So the larger our assessed valuation pool, the fewer mills we need to assess to generate the same amount of revenue, required to meet obligations. The one kind of counter to that is our general program mill levy did increase by 1 mill, which we need to do until we reach 27 mills, in the future. So we did have a 1 mill increase from there, but then that was, more than counteracted by the decrease for our mill levy override general obligation bond mills.
Thank you.
So, go ahead, Mark.
No, please go ahead. My question's probably really not that intelligent.
I highly doubt that. So 2 questions, and I think I asked one of them last year, so I think I know your answer. But can you put that almost 12 mills into a dollar amount for like a $300,000 house? What are we talking about for a? Can you do that on the top of your head? Because I can't.
Well,
so
kind of what you're asking, I mean, the actual dollar amount that someone is going to be assessed is going to be relatively the same. Just because, the assessed valuation pool greatly increased, and especially for residential, the large increase, as you may remember, is from the oil and gas sector of our assessed valuation pool. That more than doubled. Residential did go up. It was I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was nowhere near double what that increased at. So the actual dollar amount that someone is paying, they're paying, almost 12 mills less to the school district. The actual dollar amount is going to be pretty much the same. It's going to be definitely in the same ballpark as they were paying last year.
So mill goes down, but value goes up. So the overall amount is roughly the same.
The assessed valuation pool, that's what I apply the mills against, to generate the revenue that we need to generate. That greatly expanded. So with that expansion, the number of mills that the district needs to assess decrease to generate the same amount of revenue year over year.
Okay. I just wanted to be able to tell a homeowner, we lowered your taxes, but we didn't really.
They stayed pretty, I did a calculation for Mrs. Giordana for some communications that we did, and it was pretty flat.
Okay.
In what the final outcome was dollar-wise.
Okay. So then the other question, and like I said, I think I asked this one last year, so I think I know your answer, but I want to ask it anyway. We have to get from now 21 mills in our total program, total program to 27 over the next 6 years.
Yes.
But we dropped our overall mill levy by almost 12. We can't just add 6 mills now and get to 27?
No. Our total program mills, those are statutorily dictated.
Okay.
We can't, we couldn't really do that. And also we would be penalized if we didn't want to do the increase. If we didn't want to do the 1 mill increase this year, for example, the district would be penalized the value of that 1 mill from our state share. So we would be out, the $1.3 million essentially from not having that mill assessed. So we really can't. We just have to kind of go flow with the total program mill levy.
I think your answer was similar last year. I just, and when we get to that 27, it's a lot for people to see you went from 21 to 27, even though it was dictated to us. We didn't have a choice in that. So
And
just
And honestly, Vice President Sassano, we don't have a lot of leeway in this. Our mill levy overrides, how they're worded, states that, we will collect, the $4.5 million.
Right.
There isn't any wiggle room in that language. And then with our general obligation bonds, we have a payment schedule that we need to meet. So we don't really have wiggle room with that either. So we don't have a lot of options.
I understand. It's worth asking a question. So thank you.
Thank you.
And you actually answered my question by answering Nate's question. So thank you.
Mine too, and you answered mine for answering. Any other questions? All right, well, we got a couple days. We could sit on this. If we wanted to call a special meeting, we could come back and approve it then, but Mr. Everest probably just had a little heart palpitation there when I said that, so I would entertain a motion.
I'll to approve the property tax mill levy resolution for the 2024 collection year as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Director Proctor, a second by Director Johnson to approve the property tax levy resolution for the 2024 collection year. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Diagano, would you please pull the board?
Monica Johnson,
Yes.
Ed Proctor,
Yes.
Nate Sassano,
Yes.
Amy Musgrave,
Yes.
Michael Whale.
Yes. We'll move on to our new business, and if you're dyslexic, you think we're having a policy about IKEA, but it is actually IKAE.
Darn it.
Turn this, remind me after the meeting, I will tell you a very funny IKEA story. But I'll pass this off to Superintendent Nielsen.
Thanks, President Whale, board members. So tonight, we're asking to repeal the -E for the IKA, not the IKEA policy. It was hard to say that. And the reason we're asking to take this out is this is really a practice inside of the IKA policy. We actually see we have to have a practice for parents to opt out of testing. The challenge with having it as an article in the policy is every time we change a word, we have to come back to the board and do 2 readings to change that. So for us, we're asking to take out the practice. We'll have a practice as we move forward. It will continue to look like it looked generally in the past, unless the state tells us we have to shift to that. We'll communicate that out to our buildings and then out to the parents about what the opt-out process looks like. So we will continue to have an opt-out form process. We're just asking to have the flexibility and be nimble around wording and what that looks like based on both what's working, but also what's dictated to us from the state, and not have it be a process that has to come to the board each time we make a change in the practice, not the policy. So I think we get it all.
It's really just to take the form out and have that as a separate policy, is not changing.
So what would the new process be? Because I'm familiar with this. So what are you gonna do now when a parent asks to opt out?
We still have a form.
Okay.
We have right now some potential small word changes that may need to be made to this form.
Okay.
But the process will be essentially the same as it was last year, in terms of this will be available to you online. I think last year the practice was, we asked if you're opting your kids out, that you go in with the principal, that you share the form with the principal. I think it's the practice, but that isn't even part of this. That was communicated out. My understanding is, not being here. But the actual form, Director Musgrave, will be almost the same as what you're seeing here. I think it's just been, we've had to come to the board to change this form multiple times over time, and feel like, again, it's it's a practice, it's labeled in the policy, but it's granular in terms of what we're actually, the operationalizing of the policy.
So who will oversee the opt-out form? Will it be each school can have their own?
No.
Okay,
Be
we're
it,
just gonna
be
do
it
it.
it will be
Okay.
one district form,
Okay.
consistent for all schools to utilize.
Okay.
And we'll control it centrally, which we have done, but each building will operationalize their own. I mean, they'll operationalize the district form, but it'll be communicated by we have someone at the district office that coordinates testing. And then each site has a testing coordinator, and this will all be passed out through those two layers of coordination. Is that?
Yeah, and just to add to that, last year, one of the things we were trying to do was to help families who were just signing the form and opting their child out of testing and not even know what they were doing. We were trying to help educate a little more. So we added our testing coordinators at each school to have some sort of process, and administrators, so hand in hand at each school to have the families come in and say, I want to opt out and here's why. Because then the school understands that the parents know the choice that they're making and why. What we found, even at one of our schools, they were telling a parent signed a form and then they were really upset at conferences because there were no sports available, and they didn't know that they had signed a form. So we were just trying to come up with some sort of process that would help families know what choice they were making for their students.
Right.
And so it'll likely be a similar process this year.
So I'm quite educated on what I want my kids to do as far as testing is concerned.
Yep.
Are you requiring a parent to come in? If I have a conversation with a principal, I know what's going on, my kid has X, Y, and Z issues, we're not doing testing.
Yeah.
Are we requiring they come in?
No, we've never
Okay.
required it. We've encouraged,
Sure.
and it's because of those that aren't in the spot that you're in.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I didn't mean this, I just meant a certain parent, maybe a certain parent would have an issue because of their own child's situation. Okay.
I think one of the things that's important for us as a district too, and I'm on the fringe in some level of knowing. I happen to be sitting in the audience right when the district was celebrated. We had a lot more of our students test a year ago than we did the previous year. The previous year we were super low, and I think got dinged by it. I think the state looked at us and said, and the reality is from a practitioner standpoint, from a district standpoint, it's good for us to know both how we're doing, but how we can support kids. And so helping parents understand, and Amy, to your point, educating and helping them understand, I think there's a belief from some testing is all about, is the school good or not? And the reality is, from a practitioner standpoint, it helps us understand how we can support kids, where the area we need to tweak our practices are, rather than, I think, the overarching state kind of evaluating how districts are doing, which isn't a super good practice right now from the way the state's doing it. But from an internal standpoint, we get a lot of information about where kids are, both from MAP testing, the CMAS testing, but also from other dipsticks we do along the way, help us to understand how do we modify, how do we continue to help students make the growth that we would expect students to make. So I think it is important to help people, to educate and help them recognize what it's about, right? Assessing our practices against outcomes of students is a best practice as we continue to build. I think the district you've challenged me to build is, right, if we want to be a great district, and you see it in MMS being recognized. Part of the reason MMS is being recognized is an improvement in overall outcomes for kids. And that's ultimately what we're going after, is kids growing.
And we do understand that there are situations where, there's
Totally, yeah.
good reason for kids to not be a part of the assessment preference and for the parents to choose to opt out. We do recognize that too. So.
I think the district does a great job in recognizing those and then taking the ones that do need some education or some help deciding. I think we treat everybody very individually. Yeah, I like that. I think that's great.
This one we'd ask, again, it is a change in what's current policy, that it needs to sit open for the 2 weeks and look for feedback, and would ask the board to take action on this in 2 weeks on the 17th.
So how do we put that out to the community? I've never actually gone to site and looked at what's available for public review. Is it just on the website? There's a spot that says policies to be reviewed or something? And so here's my concern. When all you post is this document and it's all strike through red text, it looks like we're taking out the ability to opt out of a state test. We just talked about it ad nauseam. We're not doing that. I'm wondering when we post that, we could post the actual policy or post some narrative that says, here's why we're doing this, only to be a little more nimble and be able to change document when it needs to be changed because of state law changes or whatever it is. Just so I can see some parents who really want to opt their kids out for whatever the reason is, seeing this and going, you're not going to not opt my kid out, you know? So I'm trying to get ahead of some of the stuff we might hear.
And they'll put it out saying the
Right.
district is trying to take away my ability to opt kids out, my own kid out, which is not, you're right.
Maybe we could start the conversation, lead the conversation, the memo, whatever you put out, when opting out process will be the
Yeah,
same.
exactly.
Yeah, you know, comfort
Essentially, all
right
you're
there.
doing is just making it more flexible.
Right.
So that it doesn't have to go through this
You don't need to
stringent reading.
micromanage.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to micromanage. I'm just
No,
trying to get
this
ahead of the
is-
emails we're going to get.
Yeah, this is micromanaging.
Oh, I see what you're
it,
saying.
So we're
Yeah, yeah.
taking away our micromanaging and letting them do your job.
I think the website needs updated. No, I mean, this particular policy for review, it's talking about a policy in May 3rd, 2023 is under review. So I don't think the website for the policies is transparent. And it's just erroneous. We need to update that.
This is JLCD. It was also JLCD.
Yeah, it's the same
Yeah.
ironically, but it's incorrect.
Dates.
Oh, okay.
So
We'll get them both out
So,
tomorrow.
thank
Okay, any other questions or comments on this one? I'm assuming we have no citizen comments on general topics. Any other items deemed necessary? Great.
President West, can I throw one out that cropped up today that I'd love to know how the board would like to move forward? We had a request from the athletic director at Roosevelt this afternoon to approve a wrestling trip that's relatively soon, a week and a half. He got a request from the wrestling coach, I think today. The practice has been, the board approves all out-of-state travel. So there's no formal request right now because it happened this afternoon, but I'd love to know what the options are, or as you all look at it and think about what options would be. It's a trip to Wyoming. So in my previous district, which is not to say that was right or wrong, the district formally said a trip to Wyoming was not treated there like out of state because of the proximity. Obviously, that's a little closer, but not a lot. But I'd love to know, what the process is. It is short order. We'll have that conversation with Roosevelt, and there's an opportunity for kids to go have an experience that probably is a pretty powerful one for them that's happening in short order. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
When is the
12th and a week from Friday and Saturday, I believe.
before our next meeting.
Before our next meeting, yes.
So, I mean, yeah, we would have a special meeting to approve it. So that did come up when we talked about changing it from giving it the out-of-state as opposed to just the overnights, because we were doing anything overnight was, it had to come to the board, and that's where it was getting really stressful.
Can we base that off mileage?
I mean,
Travel?
I'm thinking that's probably not a bad idea. We went with out of state just because that's an easy line to draw. I mean, there's a difference between going to a tournament in Cheyenne and Jackson Hole.
Right.
So, right?
Yeah.
So,
And this one's Green River, so it's not Cheyenne,
Oh, that's
right?
significant
Yeah,
distance.
it's
Over by
closer or more by
Rock
Jackson Hole
yeah,
Yeah.
than going to Cheyenne. So this is not a 45-minute trip. This is it's a
4 or 5
out-of-state trip.
hour drive,
yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to do a special meeting according to policy.
Yeah, we'll just have to schedule something next week or even this week if they can get it pulled together. And
I will ask Chad, and I guess what I would propose is that we do a special meeting that's virtual. Because I don't know what your meetings have been.
we can still do a virtual meeting, and we'll only need 3 of us. So it'd be great if everybody can be there, but if we can't, we just need 3.
But it almost sounds too like a special meeting for this particular circumstance, but possibly a policy update for future circumstances when they come up, similar to this one. So would that be part of the thing to change our current policy for out-of-state travel requests?
I don't know. We certainly could talk about that, right? That's the board's prerogative, right, to approve all of those. In other districts, the board does not approve all out-of-state travel, so that's not necessarily a practice every board has. I think there's something positive about the board knowing when people are traveling them. So when I got here and watched the way it was happening last year, I appreciate that. I know it's cumbersome when things come up and it doesn't work out in time frames and in special meetings. That's hard, and yet there's a good practice. The practice now of asking for this on January 3rd for January 12th is not a best practice, and we'll speak to that.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to be transparent about, I also believe in the experiences kids have. So
Sure. No, as do we, and I think another reason why we went with the state line as the limiting factor was, it's assumed that most of the overnight trips or big experience are going to be within the state. It's the really big things like going to a national, the track team going to Oregon, FBLA nationals, FFA nationals like that are big, but
They're big things for a community too, so bringing up through the board makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Versus if you do radius of just our proximity, it might even be weird to couldn't go to Grand Junction within the state, so you can't do a radius rule.
Right.
That's right.
and that's why I say then it becomes,
Right.
and that's exactly what we had happen. Grand Junction was a good example. We had a golfer who qualified for a female golfer who qualified. They were playing at Grand Junction. She qualified the week before, so we had to have a rush. And so I know that all kind of went into that thought process. Most of our overnight trips are going to be in the state.
Yeah.
That's where we should draw our line. So.
Can they plan for the trip before they can make arrangements and all those kind of things before we approve it, right? We're not hindering them by not approving it.
I would imagine in this case, they're almost going to have to.
Okay.
I think likely I'd want to make reservations that I could cancel if I didn't get approved.
Sure. Yeah.
I think there's some, just in listening to you talk, some support in how do we work through it as opposed to we want to have a meeting so we can tell them no. But I think you need to step into when you're asking for permission, you step into it with yes and no both on the table. So, and I'll communicate that to Chad when I talk to him. That we're looking at the possibility of a virtual meeting. I'd love to try to figure out how to do that yet this week if we can. So President Wales, I'll work with you to try to figure out what sense.
It would have to be, at this point, it would basically have to be Friday because we'd have to have 24-hour notice. So,
an early Friday, if we can get there, right? Amy, you're working Friday?
I do work Friday. I do have the ability to step out for a short period of time.
they're typically 5 minutes. That's what's a pain about them, is it just,
I can have somebody give me a break.
That's why I would like to see us do the virtual, because I do think it.
yeah, no, it takes longer to drive here than to do the decision.
So if we're to do it Friday night, is there a good time that works for,
Did you say Friday night?
Friday morning. Were you thinking Friday morning?
I could do Friday morning, I think.
I thought you said early Friday,
Yeah.
but you were
Either-
thinking,
either
you were meaning early Friday night.
I don't know why I went to early Friday night, thinking just about everyone's work schedules.
Yeah.
Um,
They're so short though, the little virtual special meetings that personally I can step out for 10 minutes and do a virtual special meeting anytime Friday. That's good for everyone.
And like you said, it only needs to be 3 of us. So if somebody can't, I mean, I can be flexible Friday morning.
I'm flexible, so.
Okay, so we'll work, try to get it out, so we have the 24 hours to notice it out. And we'll work on what time.
What's your schedule like?
I work 6:30 in the morning until 7 p.m. So the worst. So
You-
I'll do my very best to get there.
Do you have to do one of these things like, hey, will you hold this,
Yeah.
can you hold this shut for me real quick?
I'll just make sure I'm not scrubbing that day. Yeah.
Hold my scalpel, I'll be scrubbing. Just kidding.
Put your finger right here.
I have a special meeting to attend.
Well, thank you for your willingness to entertain
Yeah.
and listen to that, and we'll work on our end to get to a place where we're not having meetings that we don't necessarily need to have, which I think this feels like it.
Yeah, well, and that's what I guess more than anything, I want to underline that, we don't start getting back in the habit of doing this, because we were doing quite a few of these like that, and it was kind of getting out of hand.
I support where you guys want to be, so.
Yeah. All right,
I have one last question before we go. Are we still on the docket for City of Greeley next Tuesday? Okay. Yeah.
so far. Nothing.
Haven't heard anything.
Okay.
Hopefully they don't kick that can down the road again.
All right, anything else? All right, it is 8:16. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Why is that not on my calendar? So the policy